Hi gang, I'm MyRadar Meteorologist Matthew Cappucci. Winter is here, which means different precipitation types. Rain, snow, sleet, a mixture of everything possible, and for some places, a little bit of everything. So let's break it down for you, show exactly what the different types of precip are and how they form. Everybody knows snow, everybody knows rain, but there's actually a lot in between. We'll start off with something pretty simple, just plain rain. Let's stick this tape here and show you this is the area, this is the setup that would favor rain. You have warm temperatures the entire way down. Even if the clouds are cold up here, you have at least enough warm air that any frozen precipitation melts on the way down or just stays liquid the entire time. So rain, pretty straightforward, it's just liquid. We know this. Most raindrops fall about 15 to 20 miles per hour. Bigger ones maybe a little bit faster, and believe it or not, they're actually not teardrop shaped, they are disc shaped. So cool stuff there. Then we have freezing rain. I love freezing rain. Most folks hate freezing rain. It is by far the most damaging type of winter precipitation and the highest impact. It happens when you have ordinary rain falling and it's warm just about everywhere except right above the ground. So the water doesn't have time to freeze as it falls. Instead, it lands as water and then quickly freezes upon hitting the ground. So you can have ground temperatures 25, 30 degrees, right near freezing. That's enough to slicken the roadways, and if you have a big time setup, enough to really make for a messy time on the roadways and just about everywhere. Only takes about a 1/4 inch of glaze to bring down power lines, maybe about a 1/2 inch in some places, and with a setup like this, you can have big time precip totals. The other thing too, you're actually going to get more freezing rain if the raindrops are small, because then there's less heating from the sides to keep that raindrop warm, and as a result, it gives off its heat very quickly. One other thing about freezing rain too, you can have something called overrunning, which means a very narrow layer of cold air near the ground. Warm air rides up and over it because cold air is more dense, and so it's juicy, it's wet just about everywhere until that very thin layer. And if you have some cold air entrenched and warm air from the south just flowing in, bringing in moisture, you can really stack up 2 to 3 inches plus of ice in a setup that could mean areas without power for weeks. So that's really impactful. Sleet, a little bit messier. Sleet happens when you have precipitation fall either as rain or kind of melted snow. And eventually it reaches an area just probably several thousand feet above the ground where it's below freezing, and subsequently you can have that entire thing freeze into an ice pellet by the time it reaches the ground. So we also have sleet, which is messy but not quite as impactful as freezing rain. It happens when you have near freezing temperatures but still warmer than freezing in the cloud layer. So precip falls in the form of liquid or as snow that's kind of melty and then freezes on its way down. It has plenty of time to freeze, so it's an ice pellet before it hits the ground. It doesn't stack up quite as high as snow, but it's slicker, and especially if you're driving, it kind of gets in the pavement, grinds down enough to deposit a layer of ice on the roadway. So sleet, still very dangerous. Then snow, we understand snow. It's near or below freezing the entire way down. And the cool thing, raindrops come down, like we said, 15 miles an hour. Snow just barely glides down at about 2-3 miles per hour. The cool thing, most of the time snow is subject to aerodynamic forces, so it's kind of flat. The snowflake falls like this. Once in a while, you can have a strong electric field in a thunder snowstorm, and that's enough to cause something called ice crystal canting, where all those ice crystals align with the magnetic field, and the electromagnetic field rather, instead of just aerodynamic forces. And on radar, we can see this when they all flip direction. It's really cool, kind of nerdy, but still really cool. Now, a few other winter precip types that aren't quite as easy to diagram. We have something called Grapple, which forms when you have melting snow fall through an area that has super cold water droplets. So water droplets that are below freezing but don't have anything to freeze onto. Suddenly you introduce this somewhat melty snowflake, this area of water, and all of a sudden you can have this super cooled water accrete around the snowflake and very quickly form this layer of rime ice that becomes like a soft snow pellet. Almost looks like dipping dots. And so those things kind of a bit of a crunch when they fall and hit the ground, but they do stack up and they are problematic in and of themselves. As we talk about super cooled water droplets, we have to remember that freezing fog is a thing too. And it's one of those things people don't realize that fog banks can freeze, and they oftentimes form when you have a saturated air mass, but temperatures near or just below freezing. And remember, if there's nothing for water droplets to freeze onto, they won't freeze. They can stay liquid all the way down to -40 degrees, which is why if you have a ground that is below freezing and air temperature is kind of near freezing, very quickly that fog, instead of wetting the grass and wetting the ground, can cause a layer of ice to form. That's extremely treacherous. Forecasting in wintertime can be very difficult. Fortunately, meteorologists have all the tools they need to try to pinpoint exactly how temperature profiles will match to precipitation types. That said, if you're traveling, always great to watch and figure out what exactly is coming your way. And MyRadar has a team that will be with you every step of the way. For MyRadar, I'm meteorologist Matthew Cappucci.
Follow MyRadar on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Download MyRadar on iOS, Android, Amazon Alexa, Xbox, and Windows.